Hi there, it's Dr. Joylyn Sparkles, and welcome back to Fruity Tuesday Seeds for Thought. And wow, do I have a super juicy seed for you today. Talking about stories and the stories we tell ourselves, because the stories that we tell ourselves are going to determine who we are, how we show up, and how the world shows up for us and to us then. So these stories are so important. It's a function of our brain. It's part of us as humans. We like stories, and that includes a story about ourselves. And so we want this coherent narrative about our life experience, how it shaped us, and who we are and how we operate in the world. Now, these stories, though, have their beginnings really, really early on, okay? And because a lot of the information we get comes really early when we're in theta brainwave patterns and everything is just accepted. And so it gets incorporated into the story. Now then, we also have trauma, which can impact that because it will shift how our brain incorporates information. So instead of it being more of a left brain function, it actually gets shunted more to the right. So instead of being able to put things in chronological order and in a real logical sense, that way, it gets put into the right side where it's more associational, having to do with intensity of emotions, thoughts, colors, experiences that way. But then throughout our lives, as we grow into adulthood, we're still needing this narrative because it is how we operate and make sense of ourselves and the world. But what happens is it's actually disjointed and it loops. So if you look at trauma, a lot of people think trauma and how to get out of trauma processing is to, and we'll get to that, rewrite the story. But a lot of it is actually to see it as a loop and sort of get the loop to change so that you can make it into a more streamlined, coherent story, okay? So what happens is with this trauma, with it coming from childhood, two things happen there. Number one is in childhood, we were little and the world was really big, okay? So that has the seeds of awe and wonder. Wow. You know, like when it snows for the first time and it's really pretty and your inner child is just like, whoa, this is the coolest thing I've ever experienced. Or when you look up at the stars and you can see the Milky Way and you're like, wow, I am so little compared to how big this is. And it's actually a very magical feeling. That is the exact same flip side of the coin as I am so little, this is so big, I can't handle this. And so a lot of times, depending on what was happening in or around us at the time when an experience came in, determines which side of the coin we've determined this is and how we continue to tell that story. Now, when it goes to the right side of the brain and we're dealing more with associations rather than actually sequences, it's almost like it's Christmas time, so you're putting together that string of popcorn to make the garland for your tree, and let's say you've got 2 or 3 popcorn bowls because you know it's going to take a lot of popcorn. And just for fun, you made one of them is regular colored popcorn, and there's red popcorn, and then there's green popcorn, okay? And so if everything was operating as it would, you would use all the ones from one bowl and then go to the next bowl and then go to the next bowl, or create some sort of pattern, 1, 1, 1, 1, so that there was this order, organization, and it made sense. You could look at it and see the pattern. But what happens is, and we're trying to put things back together and grasping for this piece of story, and well, this just happened to me, and it reminded me of this, and this is coming from this place. It's just like you randomly pick things from a bowl and put a garland together. Now here's the thing, just like with Christmas garland, this isn't that big of a deal. First of all, almost everybody is dealing with this because we've all been children, and I find it to be a universal human experience to have at least some type of trauma. So that your popcorn strand isn't in a logical order isn't that big a deal because you can actually see it's still pretty. It's still functional. So we can still have Christmas. You can still have a lovely story for your life. Now, the thing that most people do then is, though, try to take it apart and put it back together, or combat it, throw it all away, or smash it up or get mad at it for being that way. And it doesn't have to be a big deal. It doesn't have to be hard. But when you combat it and say what is wrong and it shouldn't have been this way, and I understand if there's trauma in there, you didn't deserve it and it isn't fair, but it is. So now instead of fighting it or trying to deny it or just simply reframe it, this is why affirmations do not work early on, is because you can't just tell your brain something wasn't true that it believes is. You can't go about it that way. So how did the stories we have now get started? Well, you told it once, it kind of sounded okay, so you just kept telling it. So that's all you have to do with a better story. And what I like to do, because the brain is still doing what it does and it's stuck in survival mode, and so it's going to make sure that we are continuing to operate as we have been, because that's how it knows how to keep us alive. But we know that that's not leading us to thriving, so how can we shift? So instead of doing an about face, which is also jarring and not likely to stick, start looking for ways in. I talked last week about what ifs, using what ifs. There's also, when it comes to stories, of, well, I might be better at this than I thought I was. Well, let me re-examine it, because maybe things aren't as bad as I thought they were. Maybe this isn't the end. What if I'm just looping here and I could actually just do something different? I might actually be good at this, but I haven't given myself a try. Actually, that went better than I thought it was. Oh, that was only the second time I've ever tried to do something, so it's no wonder that it wasn't perfect. We can do little things that will add up to have big impact, and it will be more likely to be adopted and integrated into our system, and an easier way to create a new story that's actually going to work out for a happier ending, a new and novel ending, and again, keep us maybe more in contact with that inner child wonder, bringing some of that in. Oh, wow, that didn't turn out how I wanted to at all. I wonder if, and then you can use the tool from last week's. But just look at your stories, and if it's a know-it-all, omniscient narrator that's telling it, maybe, just maybe, be curious about who trained them, where they got their information from, is it up to date? And then you don't have to get mad at it, but just say, hey, maybe it's not exactly this way. I might be better at this. Things might be going better than I thought. Oh, let's insert some actual reality in here. This is only the second or third time I've done something. I'm not bad at it. I'm new at this. So let's just start to reframe our narrative, but in a way that doesn't jar our system and get us to immediately reject new information. Post your comments, bring your questions. I'm here for you. Mwah.